think the one thing I'd like to suggest is the most important thing, in my opinion, for young marketers, for new legal marketers, or really for any marketer, is to understand thought processes of lawyers, understand how lawyers think. When I used to be a practicing lawyer, so I thought that I knew. I thought the lawyers thought like me. And I realized that later in my career, I learned that I actually think like a marketer, not like a lawyer. And so that when I'm communicating with lawyers, when I was starting out in-house in a legal marketing position at a large firm, I realized that expressing the ideas that I had for the firm as a marketer would express them was not effective. That after receiving a communications class that showed me the distinction between how marketers process information and how lawyers process information, I realized that I was approaching them from my communication style and not theirs. And that in order to be effective, in order to be persuasive, in order to get them to do what I believe, what we as marketers believe that they need to do, we have to approach it from their perspective, which means the same way that they would approach being persuasive to a judge or jury, that we have to muster our evidence, we've got to think through all the potential objections and address them, we've got to give them we've got to connect all the dots for them, we've got to give them all the bullet points, and we've got to address this slowly and methodically, show that there's a process, bring our evidence to bear in support of the conclusion. Lawyers hate conclusions unless they're thoroughly supported. Then they're going to poke at you and object and complain and disagree, which is how we understand information. How do we make sure that a good idea is actually, in fact, a good idea? We don't want to take risks with our marketing activities. And so what the lawyers will do is they'll poke at you and to try to understand it better for themselves. They're not being rude. They're not being mean. They're just trying to understand it better. And so they're prodding for whatever the potential objections are and the pitfalls. So you have to first understand what those are going to be, understand what their objections are going to be, and have a thorough, clear, evidence-supported answer for each of those objections. Start at the beginning, build slowly with all of your evidence, point after point after point, and then build toward the conclusion. If you start at the conclusion, they'll pick you apart. If you build toward the conclusion so that they will understand this sort of slowly and clearly and thoroughly, you can be persuasive with lawyers. If you don't do that, you'll have a much more difficult time working with lawyers and having them adopt what it is that we know as marketers they need to do on behalf of the firm.